Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland, so welcome back to my channel. This video is about Prince William and racialism, because His Royal Highness has been accused of racism in recent weeks. He visited the Ukrainian Cultural Centre in London on the 10th of March this year, and he made an off-the-cuff remark which caused a Twitter storm. So he was talking about the millions of Ukrainian refugees who fled their homeland, the millions and more who are internally displaced, and he said that such scenes are alien to Europe. So that was pounced on by a lot of wokesters saying, oh, so Prince William is saying that this would be permissible and in Africa, in Asia, possibly on the American continent and so forth. And saying, well, you've got to remember what your family did with all your spoliations and annihilations of people and blah, blah, blah. So they're visiting the sins of his ancestors on him many generations later and say it shows a white supremacist and a colonial mindset and all this twaddle. So there he was to empathise with people. But for over 20 years, there haven't been such scenes in Europe. And go back to the 90s, I remember the wars in the former Yugoslavia. It was the bombing of Kosovo in 1999, or NATO stopping the Serbian security forces slaughtering large numbers of civilians there. But since then, there's been nothing on a significant scale in Europe for over 20 years. Whereas, okay, we could start with Africa. There was the Sudan conflict, South Sudan created in 2001, the genocide in Darfur not so many years ago. There was a civil war in Chad. The president of Chad was only killed a couple of years ago at fighting. What else was I going to say? I mean, millions of Zimbabweans have fled their country in recent years, but that's more owing to poverty than to political oppression, though there is some of that. There's a low-level conflict in Mozambique. What else? I mean, there was a civil war in Uganda till not very long ago, going on with the Lord's Resistance Army. There's internecine warfare in Somalia. What else can I say? Obviously, there's a Libyan civil war going on for 11 years. ISIS are sometimes attacks in Algeria, in Mali and elsewhere. Likewise, there's Boko Haram in Nigeria, which has sometimes abducted up to 300 schoolgirls in one go. The civil war in Sierra Leone came to an end, well, in the early noughties, and so forth. Or you could look at, into West Asia. Obviously, there's the Israel-Palestine conflict, sometimes conflict in Iraq, even in very recent years, not just talking about right after 2003, like what we all know was going on in Syria, in the civil war in Yemen, and on and on. There was a fighting in Afghanistan, in which, of course, Prince William's brother, Harry, was involved. There's often large-scale violence in Pakistan. In Kazakhstan, the security forces killed over 200 unarmed people earlier this year. People are locked up in labor camps in China for their ethnicity, for their religion. So you might see what perhaps he's driving at. In some continents, this happens a lot more very recently. All right, not in the American conflict. I mean, the Colombian Civil War is largely over. So I don't think he's terribly racialist. So he and his good wife, Princess Kate, the Duchess of Sussex, they flew to the Caribbean on a tour of the Commonwealth realms. There are only 15 Commonwealth realms left because, of course, Barbados affected the abolishment of the monarchy last year, and their last Governor General became the first President of the Republic of Barbados. So they've had done with the monarchy. Some of these erstwhile British colonies, they still have Elizabeth II as their head of state, and she's represented by a Governor-General. And Governors-General these days are citizens of that country. In the old days, they were often people sent out from the United Kingdom who had no prior connection with that country. Anyway, so he flew into Belize, and there was a bit of a row. Some people protesting against him, saying there needs to be an apology for the fact that their ancestors were abducted in Africa and taken in chains across the Atlantic, held in servitude, and the most foul crimes were visited upon them. There were daily lashings. They were toiling from dawn till dusk, with given scarcely a husk for nourishment, and so forth. They were subjected to torture, rape, murder, and so forth, just treated as beasts of burden, treated with the greatest inhumanity. It's true. This was sadistic savagery. It was a satanic evil that was perpetrated on a vast scale. But now Prince William didn't do any of that. That all ended a very long time before he was born. He's not personally culpable. He can't be asked to answer that. And really, he is the Prime Minister's voice. The Queen and the royal family, they only act on the advice of the First Lord of the Treasury. So until Her Majesty's government advises Prince William to make some sort of statement, he's not going to do it. These speeches he reads out, they're not his speeches, they are carefully crafted for him. They've really got to weigh his words. And then he went on his itinerary, meeting various people, trying to spread the goodwill, flying the flag. Belize is a monarchy. It's chosen to have that monarchy. And so therefore, Prince William is doing his bit to serve the people of Belize. Presumably, most people in Belize want it to be a monarchy, which is why he's showing his face. One of the duties of the royals is to be in the news. If they don't want the monarchy, they can easily abolish it any time, as most former British colonies have done. But they have elected to continue with the monarchy. Then he flew on to Jamaica, which is the largest former British colony in the Antilles, and he wasn't terribly well received. Again, there were people protesting with placards, just say you're sorry, and so forth, and people say that some assessment needs to be paid by the United Kingdom. Again, His Royal Highness cannot make these decisions. He's not a politician. And then he, like his father before him, he uttered some words of repentance, expressed regret at the terrible cruelty of slavery, at the frank exploitation of millions of people over a few centuries. But he can only say those words because the British government has told him to say that and has prepared that script for him. And then he and his wife, they visited some shrine to Bob Marley. They posed for photos and people said that was cringeworthy. And I read one leftist commentator saying what they stand for and what Bob Marley represents are worlds away. Well, that may be so, but Bob Marley is a national hero of Jamaica, therefore it's apposite that they did homage to him. It would have been considered a calculated insult had they spurned that. I mean, almost any person on an important visit to Jamaica would go to some place associated with Bob Marley, who's surely the most famous Jamaican of all time, and they met the Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, who's of course very courteous, very correct and so on, but Holness has been very overt in his desire to bring the monarchy to an end and to transition Jamaica to a republican form of government, which of course is the prerogative of the Jamaican people. If they decide to do that, they can do it. And the British royal family, they're not going to beg to remain as monarchs of Jamaica, so they shan't be beseeching the people. They're not politicians, they don't campaign. If the Jamaicans want to do it, go ahead. So I'm sure that they'd be happy, they prefer to remain having Jamaica as one of their Commonwealth realms, but they shan't implore the Jamaican people to keep them. So that's it. I think it's unfair, some of the criticism has been visited on him, and you know I don't go easy on the royals. When I think they get it wrong, I really castigate them. So perhaps Prince William was unwise in saying we don't expect to see these scenes in Europe. He could have expressed sympathy in a way that was not susceptible misinterpretation, simply saying how heartrending it is, these abhorrent scenes, or something like that. So anyway, thank you for following my channel. Make sure you subscribe. And what else can I say? Oh yes, please donate on Patreon. I need Patreon donations to keep the channel going. Or PayPal, you know, you can find me, georgecallahan79@gmail.com. That's all small letters. GeorgeCallahan79@gmail.com. Toodaloo.